Alright, buckle up, because you're about to witness a collision of worlds you won't soon forget. Ever wonder what happens when a life paved in gold hits a speed bump made of pure, unadulterated reality? Get ready to dive into a story where a single scratch ignites a chain of events that could either shatter two lives or forge an unbreakable bond. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist and turn as we explore whether love can truly conquer all, even the seemingly insurmountable walls of wealth and social standing. So, settle in, because this is Ethan and Livia's story. Ethan Caldwell had it all: a kingdom built on wealth, a reputation whispered with awe, and a lifestyle most could only conjure in their wildest dreams. But as you know, the most dramatic shifts often begin with the smallest of tremors. For Ethan, that tremor arrived in the form of a jarring scrape against the pristine flank of his luxury car. Livia Moore was the antithesis of Ethan's usual companions. She possessed a strength that didn't need designer labels, an independence that wealth couldn't impress. There was an undeniable pull, a raw authenticity about her that snagged Ethan's attention and refused to let go. Could this millionaire, swimming in a sea of extravagance, learn the true value of life beyond balance sheets and bottom lines? And, more importantly, could a love born from such an unlikely encounter bridge the gaping chasm between their vastly different worlds? Keep watching, because their story is just beginning. Ethan Caldwell stepped out of a high-end cafe, the aroma of roasted beans clinging to the crisp New York air. Espresso in hand, he was the picture of urban sophistication, a titan even in this city of giants. His focus, however, was momentarily stolen by the relentless stream of emails buzzing on his phone. Then, the screech. A brutal, unforgiving sound that ripped through the city's symphony of noise, demanding his immediate attention. He turned sharply. Before him, a long, ugly gash bisected the flawless silver door of his Aston Martin. A frown, sharp and dangerous, etched itself onto his features. His gaze, like a laser, locked onto the culprit. A woman standing frozen beside an old bicycle, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and terror. Livia Moore was an anomaly in Ethan's meticulously curated world. Her faded denim jacket spoke of practicality, not price tags. Her well-worn skinny jeans and scuffed white sneakers were a stark contrast to the polished leather and bespoke tailoring he was accustomed to. Her brown hair, hastily gathered in a ponytail, had escaped in wisps, framing a face that held a quiet strength. But it was her eyes, a startling shade of grey, that truly captivated him. Sharp, independent, and holding a flicker of defiance that intrigued him more than any carefully crafted charm. She took a shaky breath and stepped forward. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I just parked and didn't realize. Her voice trembled slightly, a stark contrast to the unwavering gaze she held. Ethan's eyes flickered from the offending scratch back to Livia. In any other circumstance, the sight would have unleashed a torrent of fury. This wasn't just a car, it was a symbol, a testament to his relentless drive. Yet, something in Livia's genuine distress, the utter lack of artifice in her apology, stayed his tongue. Instead of the expected reprimand, a surprisingly calm question rumbled in his chest. "Are you okay?" Livia blinked, as if genuinely surprised by his reaction. Yeah, I'm fine. But your car?" She gestured helplessly at the damage. "The car can be fixed." Ethan shrugged, a dismissive wave of his hand. He slipped his phone into his pocket, his attention now fully on the woman before him. "You, on the other hand, cannot. What's your name?" "Livia. Livia Moore." The name felt different on his tongue, unpretentious and real. "Ethan," he replied, a simple acknowledgement. Hesitation flickered across her face, as if she couldn't quite reconcile the composed man before her with the image of a furious, entitled millionaire. "You're not mad?" Another shrug. Would getting mad change anything? A small, genuine laugh escaped Livia, the tension in her shoulders visibly easing. "I guess not." Ethan observed her for a moment longer. She was a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the carefully manicured women who usually populated his social circles, women who hung on his every word, their eyes gleaming with the reflected light of his wealth and status. Livia seemed utterly unimpressed. She carried an aura of self-reliance, a quiet dignity that spoke of navigating life on her own terms. "Do you live around here?" he asked. The question a genuine blend of curiosity and a desire to prolong this unexpected encounter. Livia nodded. "I work at a bakery nearby. The bike's usually the fastest way to get around." His gaze drifted to the battered bicycle, its frame bearing the scars of countless journeys. "I'm guessing bakeries don't exactly pay a king's ransom." She shrugged again, a gesture that spoke volumes about her priorities. "I'm not there for the money. I love baking, and I love seeing people smile when they get their favorite pastries. That's what matters." A profound silence settled between them, the city's relentless energy fading into the background. In Ethan's world, success was measured in dollars and deals, in power and prestige. Livia's metric was joy, a concept both foreign and strangely compelling. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the street, and Livia instinctively tightened her thin jacket around herself, a small shiver running through her. Ethan noticed the lack of warmth in her attire. "Do you have time for a cup of coffee?" he asked impulsively. Suspicion narrowed Livia's grey eyes. "Are you asking me out?" A wry smile touched Ethan's lips. "Consider it an attempt to make amends for the unfortunate incident with your transportation." She studied him, a silent debate playing out in the depths of her gaze. Finally, a small nod. "All right, but I picked the place." They found themselves in a cozy, unassuming coffee shop, tucked away on a quiet corner, a far cry from the sleek, minimalist cafes Ethan usually frequented. The air was thick with the comforting aroma of roasted beans and warm milk. Livia ordered a cappuccino, while Ethan stuck to his familiar espresso. "So," Livia began, cradling her warm mug in her hands, "what do you do that allows you to drive a car that probably costs more than my entire life?" Ethan smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that rarely surfaced in his high-stakes world. "I run an investment firm." One perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "Sounds like one of those guys in movies, always in expensive suits, buying up small companies and turning them into big, scary corporations." Ethan chuckled, the sound surprisingly light. Not entirely inaccurate. Livia set down her cup, her grey eyes direct and unwavering. "So, why is a guy like you worried about a little scratch on his car? I figured you'd be on the phone with your insurance company before I could even apologize." Ethan paused, considering his answer. He rarely had to explain himself, especially not to someone who seemed utterly immune to his status. "Honestly, maybe because I'm tired of the superficiality. I meet a lot of people who only see the bank account and the title. But you're different." The words felt surprisingly honest, a rare glimpse into the weariness that sometimes accompanied his gilded existence. A faint blush touched Livia's cheeks, a subtle wave of color that softened her sharp features. "I'll take that as a compliment." Their eyes met across the small table, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a spark of genuine connection, a flicker of intrigue that had nothing to do with closing a deal or climbing a social ladder. Stepping back onto the bustling street, the sky had deepened to a bruised twilight. Livia checked her watch. "I should get going." A pang of unfamiliar regret tightened Ethan's chest. He wasn't used to encounters ending so abruptly, leaving him wanting more. "Can I see you again?" The question hung in the cool evening air, carrying a weight he hadn't anticipated. Livia tilted her head, a thoughtful expression on her face. Then, a small, enigmatic smile played on her lips. "If you happen to stop by the bakery early in the morning, I might just save the best pastry for you." A genuine laugh rumbled in Ethan's chest, a sound that felt surprisingly freeing. "Then I guess I'll have to stop by." Livia waved, a brief, almost shy gesture, before hopping onto her bicycle and disappearing into the city's vibrant pulse. Ethan stood there, the scent of exhaust fumes mingling with the faint sweetness clinging to the air, utterly captivated by a woman who had nothing he possessed, yet held something he desperately craved. This chance encounter, born from a minor mishap, felt like the prelude to something significant, something that could shatter the carefully constructed walls of his world. Ethan Caldwell was not an early riser. His mornings typically began with the meticulous perusal of stock reports and power breakfasts in sterile, high-rise dining rooms. Yet, the next morning found him standing across the street from Livia's Little Delights, the warm, inviting glow from within, beckoning him like a siren's call. Through the steamy windows, he saw Livia, a whirlwind of focused energy, her hands dusted with flour as she transformed simple ingredients into edible works of art. The air outside was thick with the intoxicating aroma of yeast and sugar, a stark contrast to the sharp, metallic scent of the city he usually inhabited. The bell above the bakery door jingled merrily as he entered. Livia looked up from a tray of perfectly glazed croissants, her eyes widening in surprise before a warm, genuine smile spread across her face. "I didn't think you'd actually show up." Ethan leaned against the counter, a playful smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "I never break a promise, especially when the reward involves pastry." She chuckled, reaching for a delicate tart adorned with vibrant raspberries. "Here, the first one of the day. Consider it a peace offering for my questionable parking skills. But don't think you can freeload. My ingredients aren't exactly free." He pulled out his wallet, a genuine smile gracing his features. "So, do I get a discount for being a regular?" Livia shook her head, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You have to come at least 5 times before you earn that privilege. Loyalty has its rewards, Mr. Caldwell." He took a bite of the tart. The buttery crust crumbled in his mouth, the sweet tart filling bursting with flavor. "This is incredible." "Of course it is," she retorted, a playful challenge in her tone. "Did you think I was bad at this?" Ethan laughed, the sound surprisingly light and unburdened in the cozy space. There was no artifice with Livia, no carefully constructed persona to navigate. She was simply, unapologetically herself, and it was utterly captivating. They talked easily, the conversation flowing as naturally as the steady stream of early morning customers began to filter in. He learned about her passion for baking, the joy she found in creating something that brought a small measure of happiness to people's day. He, in turn, found himself sharing anecdotes about his work, his voice losing some of its usual guarded edge. Soon, the morning rush demanded Livia's full attention, her hands a blur of flour and frosting. Ethan lingered for a while, simply watching her, an unfamiliar sense of peace settling over him amidst the comforting chaos of the bakery. He left that morning with a lingering taste of raspberry and a burgeoning desire to know more about the woman who had so effortlessly disrupted his meticulously ordered life. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan found himself drawn back to Livia's little delights with increasing frequency. He told himself it was mere curiosity, a temporary deviation from his usual routine. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. In Livia's presence, he felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years, an ease that was absent in the company of those who moved within his gilded cage. His altered schedule didn't go unnoticed by his social circle, a collection of individuals whose lives revolved around status, wealth, and strategic alliances. One opulent evening, amidst the clinking of champagne glasses and the murmur of high-stakes deals at a finance industry gala, a familiar voice cut through the polished pleasantries. "You've been rather elusive lately, Ethan." Ethan turned to find Lucas Sterling, his longtime friend and colleague, a knowing smirk playing on his impeccably groomed lips. Lucas, impeccably dressed as always in a bespoke suit that likely cost more than Livia's bicycle, crossed his arms. "I hear you've been slumming it at a bakery." The word bakery dripped with condescension. Ethan took a slow sip of his vintage wine, unfazed by the thinly veiled amusement in Lucas's tone. "Livia's pastries are quite exceptional, Lucas. You should try them sometime." Lucas chuckled, a sound that held a hint of genuine concern, albeit tinged with his inherent elitism. "Ethan, don't tell me you've actually fallen for this pastry chef." The term was delivered with a theatrical roll of his eyes. A flicker of annoyance crossed Ethan's face. "She has a name, Lucas. Livia." Lucas shrugged dismissively. "Whatever. My point is, don't you think she's a bit outside your usual demographic? I mean, the woman probably doesn't even know what a hedge fund is." Ethan sighed, the weight of their unspoken judgment pressing down on him. "I fail to see how Livia's profession or knowledge of the financial markets has any bearing on my personal life." Lucas's chuckle held a sharper edge this time. "Ethan, you're one of the most influential figures in finance. Your relationships are scrutinized, analyzed. If you start a serious relationship with someone beneath you, it's going to affect your reputation. Trust me, the media will have a field day with this. And our clients, well, they expect a certain image. A wave of irritation washed over Ethan. I don't need anyone's permission to date whomever I choose. Lucas's smirk widened. You might think that, old friend, but you don't live in a vacuum. You can't simply ignore the way society works, not for some bakery girl. The casual dismissal in his voice grated on Ethan's nerves. Ethan's grip tightened on his glass, his knuckles turning white. He remained silent, the unspoken disapproval in the air thick and suffocating. Lucas wasn't entirely wrong. Within days, Ethan noticed the subtle shifts, the curious glances, the hushed whispers, the knowing smiles that followed him through the gilded halls of his world. And then, the inevitable happened. One evening, Livia's call came, her voice tight with an unfamiliar tension. Can we meet? Ethan's heart clenched with a premonition of disaster. He drove to the bakery, the city lights blurring into streaks of anxiety. Livia stood outside, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, holding a folded newspaper. She handed it to him without a word, her eyes filled with a quiet devastation. The garish headlines screamed from the front page, beneath a candid, unflattering photo of them at the coffee shop. Millionaire mogul's doe-eyed romance with humble baker. The accompanying article dripped with thinly veiled mockery and classist undertones, painting Livia as an opportunistic gold digger and Ethan as a fool blinded by a fleeting infatuation. Rage, cold and sharp, surged through Ethan. He looked at Livia, his voice low and dangerous. Are you okay? A small, humorless laugh escaped her lips. Just a little surprised to find myself the subject of such eloquent prose. He saw the hurt flickering behind her brave facade, the vulnerability she usually kept carefully guarded. Livia, he said, reaching for her hand, his touch firm and reassuring. You know I don't care about any of this garbage, right? She exhaled, her gaze fixed on the harsh glare of a passing car's headlights. But society does, Ethan, and the people in your world certainly do. He took her hand, his grip firm. That doesn't matter. Livia studied his face, her expression a mixture of longing and doubt. Finally, she shook her head slowly. I'm not sure it's that simple, Ethan. A knot of fear tightened in his chest. This was the first time he had seen a crack in her unwavering spirit, the first time she seemed to truly question the chasm between their lives. He had always been the one in control, the master of his universe. But with Livia, the rules were different, the stakes far higher. He was terrified of losing her. In the days that followed the tabloid exposé, an invisible wall seemed to rise between Ethan and Livia. He called, he texted, but her responses were polite, yet distant. She didn't refuse to see him, but the easy warmth that had defined their initial connection had cooled, replaced by a cautious reserve. Every conversation felt like navigating a minefield of unspoken anxieties. He knew the article had shaken her, exposed her to a world of scrutiny and judgment she had never asked for. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan found himself outside the bakery as Livia's shift ended. The air was sharp with the scent of fallen leaves, the city lights casting long shadows on the empty street. When she emerged, her face was etched with fatigue, yet her inherent radiance still shone through. She stopped short when she saw him, a flicker of surprise in her tired eyes. Ethan, what are you doing here? He took a deep breath, the cool air stinging his lungs. I need to talk to you, but not here. Will you walk with me? Livia hesitated for a long moment, her grey eyes searching his. Then, with a quiet nod, she fell into step beside him. They walked in comfortable silence, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of leaves under their feet and the distant hum of the city. I've been thinking a lot about us, Livia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. And I'm not sure I can keep going like this. Ethan's heart plummeted. Why? Because of what people are saying? She stopped, turning to face him, her expression earnest. Not just them. I don't want to lose myself, Ethan. I like my life, my work.